Red Polly.
Dusty.
Blue Poncho.
Tupac.
Street.
Hey, Wilson Hoosier. Hey, Elvis.
Blue 58. Go.
Welcome, everyone. Week 3, Episode 7 of Health Matters.
Okay, let's take it away with the injury roundup, guys. Tyler, tell us about Nick Chubb. What happened with him last Monday night?
Yeah, so as we all saw, Nick Chubb had a gruesome-looking knee injury in the game. Minkah Fitzpatrick of the Steelers went low and hit him. He was out. We originally thought that this was going to be a multi-leg knee injury. They have now reported that it was just his MCL that needed to be reconstructed. Obviously, this still keeps him out for the season, but Doc, how does this change his recovery and possibly coming back to the game next year if it is just his MCL and no ACL or other ligamentous injury?
Yeah, Tyler, if you look at Nick Chubb, he has a prior significant left knee injury that he had multiple years ago. He's obviously come back and done very well with that, but it's a little bit of a similar type of injury where he had his MCL. Now, what is interesting, a surgical MCL is pretty significant, meaning most of the MCLs in the NFL heal on their own, and MCLs out when we play sports heal on their own. However, if you have a surgical MCL, I am still worried about other ligaments, to be honest. And it's reported that he's got a quote unquote stretched ACL. And that to me makes much more sense. They go together, especially if you're getting to the level of a surgical requirement for MCL. And so a stretched ACL will probably be evaluated in surgery or with other additional MRI or additional hands-on testing to see how the ligament is behaving and see if the ACL needs reconstructing at the time of surgery. So at a minimum, it sounds like he's going to get an MCL reconstruction. It's pretty significant. It's still a good 4 to 6 month recovery for this, but not 7, 8, 9 months if he needs ACL. So hopefully for the best for Nick, and hopefully it's just an MCL reconstruction, because I think he'll come back very well. These heal extremely well with an anatomically either repaired or reconstructed MCL.
Doc, do you have if something like that happens and you get in there and he plays at the NFL level and you look at that ACL and it's stretched, what determines whether or not you're fixing it? Is there a certain number that you're looking at, or how are you making that call?
It's a combination of everything. It's a combination of looking at the injury mechanism, looking at the video if you have the privilege of that, and obviously you do in this case. The biggest thing is the hands-on examination and what the knee feels like. We have a number of ACL tests called the Lockman examination, the pivot shift test, and you can compare it side to side with his other uninjured knee, which he still has, and that's really good to be able to compare. In addition, you can do an assessment, and sometimes these NFL players have legs that are so big it's hard to get them to relax. It's hard to get their knee is swollen, it's painful, and so you can't get a great examination. So what you can do is under anesthesia, when they're not feeling any pain or any issues with the knee, I'm able to test it and test the ACL under anesthesia and do those tests. But the tests are the most important. MRI data also adds in, and if it's complete, it's very simple, but sometimes we get some strain patterns seen on the MRI that are a little bit difficult to interpret. I think that's probably what's going on here.
Yeah, with 2 big traumatic knee injuries, what are the chances he returns to the performance he was having so far this season? What do you think?
I think I would say Nick's ability to get back by middle of next season to his pre-injury performance is very solid, way more than a 90% chance.
That's great to hear for Nick. Tyler, what else you got? Big news and injury data this week.
Well, while we're on knee injuries, wide receiver Mike Williams of the Chargers went down with what looked to be a pretty significant knee injury this past weekend. Doc, you saw the video. Initially, you said that's at least MCL, if not more. They're coming out, they're fearing that he may be done for the season. What are your thoughts after seeing that video?
Yeah, I was pretty concerned when I saw the video and the analysis and just the torque and the vectors of force that went across Mike Williams' left knee when he was tackled and taken to the ground. Certainly looked bare minimum of very significant MCL, and with that, we usually see, just like we talked about with Nick, ACL or other ligament or meniscus as well. And so, if he's headed to surgery, it's either a multi-leg knee injury, which we certainly feared in the beginning, or hopefully it'll still be non-operative. And it's non-operative, it could just be a non-operative MCL. It could be some other small stuff going on in the knee, but the fear is that he's got more than one ligament at this point.
Yeah, when the coach says fear, that's always a scary thing, right? He doesn't know yet, but the writing's on the wall almost at that point. Go ahead, Tyler. Tell us about some more injuries.
Derek Carr, QB of the Saints, went down hard on his right throwing shoulder. Initially, they called it a shoulder injury. They did bring him to the hospital to do additional testing. There was mention of possible chest testing to test everything from internal organs to possible rib injury. However, it came back and was reported that he suffered an AC joint sprain. Doc, you've dealt with a lot of these, a lot of AC joint sprains in your day on quarterbacks and throwing athletes. What does this look like for him coming back, and what's going to determine his length of time out?
Tyler, best possible case scenario for Derek Carr. AC separation only. When we went to the hospital, of course, we were always worried just based on the mechanism of injury. What we concerned about with quarterbacks, you look at Drew Brees, 5, 6, 7 fractured ribs, and how challenging that is to come back from, because it is your entire core and the ability to generate power and strength when you're throwing the ball. But this is the best possible scenario for Derek, just being an AC. I'm really glad that they got additional tests. It's always good to be safe. It's almost impossible to rule out rib fracture with just x-ray. And so you can get an x-ray at the stadium. That's not a problem. You can do rib x-rays, you can do collarbone x-rays, you can do other shoulder joint x-rays, make sure that's all good. But getting a CT scan and or MRI at the hospital really truly is the best way to make sure no rib fractures, no internal organ damage. And it looks like all of that was negative by reports. So this is the best possible case scenario. When does Derek Carr come back? I think it could be pretty soon. Now, right shoulder, AC joint, it's very painful, but it is actually one of the most successful areas we can do game time or practice time injections and get them back pretty quickly. Our average time on quarterbacks with a pretty significant AC sprain, and why is this significant? Because he went to the hospital to get a bunch of other testing done. Most AC joint sprains, you don't go to the hospital to get it fully assessed. So with a pretty significant AC sprain, I'm guessing about 2 to 3 weeks. But with some injections and good rehabilitation, that timeline could be advanced.
So, Doc, when do NFL players need surgery for an AC joint sprain?
Yeah, almost never, but except if it's a very displaced AC joint. And so that's going to be one of the things you can quickly tell on x-rays. There are, by definition, 6 grades of AC joint sprains. The vast majority are type 1, type 2, or type 3. But if you get up to the higher level, 4, 5, or 6, then we're starting to think about surgery, because you've lost the collarbone articulation at the rest of the shoulder joint. The collarbone comes out to the scapula. And if you lose that articulation, although many do well with a type 1, 2, 3 and never need surgery, sometimes these higher level AC joints need surgery to stabilize the shoulder girdle, especially in a throwing arm.
Yeah, Tyler, going back to the sideline days, I always would grimace when a 300-pound guy is falling on the quarterback straight on that arm. It's the first thing you do. You say, oh, no, running out there, you already have a bad feeling, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's not something you want to see for sure.
All right. So tell us about the concussion update this week, Tyler. I think we had 4 or 5 on the list. Give us who's in the protocol now.
Yeah, Jonathan Mingo of the Panthers, Cesar Ruiz, Saints center. Jimmy Garoppolo was evaluated for a concussion, as well as Eli Apple, Dolphins defensive back. Guys, we talked about concussions a couple of times now. It seems like there's just as many, if not more, this year than there have been in the past. However, Doc, you talked about all the things the NFL is trying to do to reduce those concussions. Do you think it's just that they're hyper vigilant now, looking at this type of injury for player safety, or maybe these are things that would have been missed in the past, or do you think there actually are more concussions?
Tyler, that's hard. That's a hard question to answer. Now, if you truly look at the data, there are more concussions now at the end of the day. That being said, I just think the safety profile and keeping the players' health at the number one is really good. And I think that's probably really highlighting the ATC spotters, the ability for the referee to look at everything, the ability for other players to stop play if they're concerned about one of their teammates. All of these new concussion rules and spotting is really important. Why? Because we know taking care of the brain is super important and brain rest works.
Yeah, it's great to see that they got a better emphasis on concussions this year. So we'll keep that update each week. We'll let you know how many are in the protocol and how that's going as we track it through the season. We have some breaking injury news coming out of the NFL for tonight's Monday night game. Joe Burrow is going to go through a little warm-up practice, and he is possibly going to play tonight. What do you think about that, Doc?
Yeah, I don't think Joe's been right since he was carted off in the preseason. We've been talking about that for multiple weeks through the first 6 episodes, and I'm not sure he's truly going to be ready. The calf is really important for being able to have mobility, also generate your power, and it's a very significant injury that can take 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 weeks, depending how severe this is, to fully heal. Now, obviously, he wants to play Monday night, and we'll see how that goes. I'm still cautiously optimistic that he's going to play. And if he plays, I'm not sure his performance is still going to be the textbook Joe Burrow performance we've seen in the past.
Yeah, Tyler, you think he should go or what?
It's going to be hard for him. I agree with Doc there. I think they should probably rest him. I mean, he's obviously their franchise QB. He's getting paid like it. So I think you rest him, give him that chance to recover. He goes and hurts himself even more and has a re-injury. That's pretty much your season at that point. So I think we've seen him struggle the first 2 weeks. I think you let him sit this one out, rest it, hopefully come back a little bit better. I know that people are going to say, hey, he's had this injury since camp. He's had time to rest it. It hasn't gotten better. But you have to give him some time, a little bit more in season or every so often to let that rest. Or I think it's just going to turn into a bigger injury than they want it to be.
Yeah. Speaking of another franchise quarterback, what was the deal with Patrick Mahomes this weekend, Tyler?
Yeah, Patrick Mahomes had his right ankle rolled up on in the game this past weekend. And if you guys remember, this is the same right ankle that he hurt prior to the Super Bowl. It looked like it was obviously a little bit less. It wasn't quite that high ankle mechanism, but something to think about is it being the same ankle. Doc, does that worry you for re-injury throughout the season? He did leave for halftime like everyone and came back and played, and then obviously was taken out because they were up by so many points. But are you worried about re-injury on that ankle now that he tweaked it?
Once you get an ankle sprain, it's much easier to get an ankle sprain. If you've had an ankle sprain yourself, especially the low ankle on the outside of your ankle, it's much easier to sprain again. Your ligaments are stretched, they're compromised, and I'm certainly worried about it. Now, of course, he had a high ankle in pre-Super Bowl, but he had a long time to let this heal and get better in the offseason, and clearly he's demonstrated outstanding Mahomes' presence and his ability to really perform at the highest level. I do think he could have some intermittent issues, although I think they'll be small unless he gets another big trap or contact type of injury to that ankle. So I think we'll see some intermittent but very small, maybe not even noticeable performance changes over the next several weeks.
Yeah, let's keep an eye out for Patrick. He's a fun player to watch. That wraps up the injury news. Remember to check out thepredictors.com for all the latest injury news. All right, let's talk about some of the fun this weekend. The AFC had a pretty amazing blowout, high-scoring 70-20 game with the Broncos. How's that Dolphins team looking to you guys?
Yeah, that Dolphin team is looking amazing. Tua is really just shutting up all the haters that are hating on him before the season. Let's be honest, no one really had much confidence in the Dolphins. Preseason, it was between the Dolphins and the Patriots for who was going to be at the bottom of the AFC East. And right now, I mean, It's certainly not the Dolphins. Dolphins, I mean, putting up beating another team by 50 points in the NFL. That's a college game. That's college score. Brandon, that's right up your alley with your LSU boys.
Yeah, I know. Alabama quarterback right there, Tyler. What do you think of that?
Yeah, well, I love to see it, obviously, as a Alabama alum. But I it was a game that nobody could predicted. Mike McDaniel's unbelievable coach, and at the end of the game, he did the respectful thing because he could have gone for the NFL record, but instead took a knee to be respectful to Sean Payton and his team. Listen, at the end of the day, when you have Tyreek Hill out there, I mean, they were without their other big wide receiver and Jalen Waddle, so another concussion. So to put up 70 points on Denver and Sean Payton, who's known for his defense, is just an unbelievable win for them. So it's a great day.
Yeah, another team that's intriguing me is the Ravens as they continue to struggle. Losing to the Colts without their starting rookie quarterback, an overtime game. They lost another running back, Gus Edwards, to concussion. What do the Ravens need to do to get healthy and get some wins?
Yeah, I'm not sure. They've been struggling this season. Injuries have been hitting them hard these past few seasons. If I'm not mistaken, they may have fired their entire strength staff and started fresh, started brand new, but still struggling with injuries. They just need to pull it together. I mean, the Colts are really not a good team. They started Gardner Minshew, the backup quarterback, to the rookie Anthony Richardson, and they took the Ravens all the way down to the last minute of overtime with a game-winning field goal. The Ravens just are not looking like a hot team. The Colts aren't a great team, and it was only a 3-point game.
Yeah, Lamar Jackson, he didn't have the weapon in Odell Beckham, but hopefully they can start doing some stuff. Tyler, tell us about the NFC. Tell us some surprises you had there.
Yeah, I think one of the big ones there was the Texans playing as well as they did. CJ Stroud went off, played fantastic, especially considering that, based on the banged up scores, they're pretty low. They have quite a few injuries on that team. So for them to come out and be able to play like they did is huge. And then a big surprise for me is that Dallas Arizona game. I mean, Dallas has been playing out of their mind. Their defense has looked fantastic. But Arizona did exactly what they needed to with that Dallas defense. They just didn't turn the ball over. If you look at the stats in that game, it wasn't like Arizona had this unbelievable game or a certain player on their team just went off. They just played a good game, is what they did. They held on to the ball. They only had 2 sacks for, I think, 11 yards. They didn't turn it over, and they did what they had to come out on top. And then their defense played great, played well against Dallas and Dak, and they got that win.
Yeah, a lot of fun games this week. It was a fun Sunday to watch. Give us your fantasy surprises for the week, Tyler. I know that guy down in Miami, he had 48 points or something, the Devin Anchi. Who else had a good day?
Yeah, I mean, anyone on Miami had a great day. So, yeah, Devon actually, he had 47 points, I think, in a non-PPR league. Obviously, Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill, they all went off and had fantastic games. So, I mean, if you had any of those guys on your team, you did well. Another surprise was DK Metcalf. He played really well considering that he was questionable for that game with a rib injury. Came out with, I think he had something like 17 points or something like that in PPR leagues. So, I mean, for coming out after the ribs, I mean, that can sometimes hurt your breathing, hurt, whether or not you want to take a tackle, but he powered through it and was able to really come through for his Seahawks and his fantasy team owners.
Yeah. Looking ahead a little bit in fantasy, we got Alvin Kamara returning this week from the suspension. Is he a guy you're going to put on the field on your team this week?
Yeah, if you have Alvin Kamara, if you've been stashing him on your bench, I think he's definitely somebody that you want to play. Uh, when you look at the Saints, they lost Jamal Williams for a while. They put him on IR because of the hamstring. Of course, they have Tony Jones. They brought up Miller, who's a rookie, but Kamara, he's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. So I think if you have him on your team, you have to play. But I think Ryan may have some stats on coming back from suspension. Is that right?
That's right. So game 1, coming back from suspension, players tend to be up about 17% in their production from their last game before their suspension to their first game. Now, a lot of that most likely can be contributed to the extra rest. I mean, he got to sit these first 3 weeks of the season. I don't know if you guys have any other opinions on that, but Tyler, what do you think?
No, I'd agree with you. I think it probably comes down to rest. It probably comes down to watching your boys on the field and while you're staying on the sideline, not being able to contribute. And I think when they get out there, they've been itching to get back out there. So they play well. But I agree with you that the rest probably is one of the top contributors to that.
Yeah, it's just like undergoing brain rest for concussion and going through the concussion protocol. Same type of concept. Players come back even better when looking at all of our statistics.
Yeah, and that game's going to be one of my games to watch for Week 4. They're playing the interdivision rival, the Buccaneers, so that's always a fun matchup to watch the Saints and Bucks. So that's my Week 4 game to watch. What about you guys? Who do you got Week 4 to watch, Tyler?
I'll take the Dolphins Bills. I think that's going to be a great offensive game. If you have those guys on any of those guys on your fantasy team, you're going to be, I think you'll be happy at the end. Let's just put it that way. I wouldn't call it pleasantly surprised, but definitely happy. I think that should be a shootout.
Yeah, Ryan, who you watching?
This may not be the most entertaining game, but I'm interested in it just because of how poorly these teams have been performing this season and they're playing against each other. But the Broncos versus the Bears. Justin Fields, I was expecting him to be one of the best quarterbacks this season, and he put up 8 points this weekend in fantasy. And obviously, I mean, the Broncos just got beat by 50. So I mean, they want to bounce back week. So I feel like they're gonna come out hard. Should be maybe their best matchup of the season, hopefully, at least to this point. But that's the game I have my eye on, not for entertainment purposes, but just for the outcome of that game.
Yeah, that'll be a slop fest for sure.
Yeah.
What about you, Doc? Who you circling this week?
Well, no one thought the Vikings were going to be 0-3, but they got Vikings and Panthers at Carolina playing. So, that for me at least is interesting because this is going to make or break Minnesota's season. They lose that game, it's they're not going to be there in the playoffs. It's going to be a huge problem. Though the other one it's kind of intrigued about, especially with Arizona's performance, is Arizona at San Francisco, and that's afternoon game on Sunday. So I think that's going to be interesting if Arizona can show up on like they've done the first couple weeks.
Yeah, exciting to see them rally back to another win back-to-back against the interdivision rival 49ers. That'd be a fun one as well. A lot of good games this week, guys. Check us out, thepredictors.com, Health Matters Podcast. Thanks for listening.
Go!